Okay, I think we can kick it off. Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Jennifer Rizzi. I'm head of content and product marketing here at Allaware. It's great to see some familiar faces and some new faces here today. And I'm joined by my colleague Ashley here at Allaware. She's a CS manager. So, do you want to say hi, Ashley, and tell us about what you do here?
Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. My name's Ashley. I'm a customer success manager here at Allaware. So I help with client onboarding and just supporting clients as best as possible so that they can have success using Allaware.
Yes, all of our clients love working with Ashley, so we're lucky to have her. And we have a very special guest here today, all the way from RB at Software. It's Caitlin Filippi. Hi, Caitlin. How are you?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us about your background and what you guys do at Arbeit and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've been partnered with Haleware for a while and we just loved working with you guys. At Arbite, I'm our director of product, and for the last 7 years, I've helped businesses who focus in high volume, high risk calling, specialize in getting the best connection rates that they possibly can. So ties in perfectly with this, and I think it's going to be a great webinar today.
Yes, we're very happy to have Caitlin's expertise because, she develops these products and works really closely on that side of things. So she has a lot of great guidance to share. So, okay, hopefully you all can see my screen. So let's start with a very simple question. When was the last time that you answered a call from an area code you didn't recognize? Well, if you're like most people, the answer might be never, and you can bet that your prospects feel the same way. So when leads see an unfamiliar number on their caller ID, especially one that looks unrelated to their region, they might assume that it's spam or a robocall or maybe a stranger trying to sell them something they don't need. We get that every day, right? It's an interruption, it's not welcome throughout our day. So they ultimately just don't answer, and your rep loses a really valuable chance to connect with them. And what's frustrating is that this really has nothing to do with your pitch or your product or how good of a fit you are with their business. It's the perception before the call that's really killing that conversation and also killing the revenue impact. So, believe it or not, caller ID is your first impression with prospects. And that happens before your reps ever pick up, ever say hello, and even get into their pitch at all. So, this is really painful for teams that are working really hard to follow up quickly, as we all are. We all have goals to hit, and it's an intense sales environment. So maybe your marketing team spent weeks generating really high quality leads, and your SDRs get assigned hot prospects. They're on the ball, they call immediately, but they get sent straight to voicemail. And that's not because the lead isn't interested, but it's because your number looks suspicious. And every one of these misconnections really slows down pipeline, it does impact your revenue, and it just drags out sales cycles. And that's not something that any sales director wants, of course. It wastes your reps time and it lowers conversion rates overall. And the worst part is a lot of times they're not even aware why that's happening in the background. And you might blame your team when they are working really hard. Or you might think they're not dialing enough, but it's not just about the volume of dials, it's about the quality of the connections that are being made and ultimately the right fit between your two businesses. So that's why we say that answer rates don't just depend on call volume, they depend on caller trust. So, how much faith your prospects put in your business for being legitimate and being helpful. So, if your number looks unfamiliar or suspicious, it's really just game over before the conversation starts. And that's not something that any of us want. But the good news is there's a very simple fix to that. And that's really where local presence comes in. So, we'll kind of walk you through what that means if you're not familiar with it or you haven't used it before. So, in short, local presence automatically matches your outbound caller ID to your lead's local area codes. So, for example, if you're calling a number in LA, they'll see a 310, or in New York, they'll see a 212 number or something similar. And the good news is it all happens behind the scenes. So, your reps really don't even have to lift a finger for that. And why this matters is that people really tend to pick up local calls more because it makes you feel familiar and relevant to their day to day. So, as I said earlier, nobody likes interruptions. We've all been on the receiving end of unwelcome cold calls, so we don't want to put anybody else through that misery. But when you are appearing to be local and relevant and something that they are focused on day to day, your pickup rates can actually increase by up to 4%, or by four times rather. So that's a really massive impact, especially for sales teams who are trying to shorten their sales cycles and maybe aren't getting the connect rates that they want to see right now. So just imagine the impact of that multiplied across the board. You don't necessarily have to hire more reps. You can, of course, to drive even more results, but you really can increase impact with the reps that you have on your team already with local presence. So it's about getting through faster as well. So, more conversations mean shorter deal cycles. Leads aren't waiting for days to hear from you, and your reps really build that momentum that it takes to follow up faster and boost their speed to lead just by changing their area code. But the key here with local presence, and this is super important to keep in mind, is that it has to be private, meaning you're not sharing those numbers with other people. That might seem like common sense, but the truth is many people are, because if you're using a provider that has shared local presence pools, as many do, and if they're rotating numbers among that pool, you're really defeating the purpose that we're trying to accomplish with local presence. And you're showing up looking suspicious anyway, even when you're trying not to. So you're trying to be really friendly and relevant, but you're going to make prospects skeptical of you because, they're not really going to recognize your caller ID that way. So carriers can actually mislabel your caller ID, and we've even heard reports from people using these shared local presence pools that sometimes they're showing up as competitors, which is pretty wild, or as conflicting businesses or industries that have nothing to do with their actual business. And I think we can all see why that's just super confusing from the leads end. So, for example, if you're a gym who's trying to sell fitness subscriptions in one local area that you're targeting with your local presence, but your caller ID shows up as a pizza shop nearby, that could have a really negative impact on your outreach. And that's going to turn prospects away. It's going to make them question your legitimacy. So, nothing that we want in the grand scheme of things, because we're trying to work against that. So that's why we here at Allaware, unlike other providers, we never make you share local presence with other customers. You can always rest easy that your numbers are just your own, they're private, and they're not coming from pooled resources. So next, let's talk about some creative ways that teams are using local presence beyond just cold calls. So it really is a versatile tool that teams can use in very strategic ways to increase their outreach impact. So let's start with regional campaigns. Let's say you're hosting a local event, maybe you're opening a new store branch or a grand opening, something of that nature. Maybe you're running a very specific territory-based sales promotion. So you can follow up with leads in that area using a matching local number. So they're going to pick up, it feels personal, it builds that trust, and your calls are a lot more likely to get answered. And another way that a lot of people use it that kind of gets overlooked sometimes is for re-engaging cold leads. So when you're working very old or stale lead lists, sometimes you don't know who's interested and who's not, especially if those lists are very bloated and they've been sitting for a while. And that can really be an uphill battle for your reps. But if you're showing up as a local number, that warms things up a little bit so it's not super cold outreach. So it gets some of those leads curious enough to answer so you can see who's raising their hand and who might be open to have a conversation. We have A2P 10DLC for text outreach as well. You can launch 10-digit personalized, very friendly text campaigns. And that's also a really great way to prune those lead lists. So you're not wasting time just calling and calling a lead who may never pick up and just isn't interested at all. That way you can see who responds favorably via text or, who picks up your local presence outreach and might be open to a conversation. So that's kind of my spiel to kick it off. And then I'd love to toss it over to Ashley here. I'll stop sharing my screen and she'll show you more about how it works and what you can expect as a user.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Let me get my screen shared here. Alrighty. So thank you, Jennifer. As she previously mentioned, local presence increases connection rates by making the number appear as local or familiar. On top of having a familiar number, your sales reps also have a much larger number pool to call from. So why does that matter exactly? If your reps are calling 100 plus leads a day from one single line, it's way more likely that that number is going to show up as spam. And in all reality, no one is answering a phone call that shows up as spam likely. So what does Allaware have to offer? So we offer nationwide and international packages. So calling into the US, Canada, and the UK. And all of the numbers within the local presence packages that we provide are exclusively yours. So no shared pools, which helps to maintain your brand integrity, but also protects your reputation while allowing for easy inbound routing for returned calls. So reps really simply just have to choose the local presence line when outbound calling, and Allaware does the geo routing for them. It is a pretty easy setup within the admin side of Allaware. So you simply would purchase the local presence package that fits your team's need, assign it to either a user or a specific ring group, and that's it. So rather than just telling you about it, let me actually show you the local presence and how to add it onto your Alloware account. Okay. All right, let's actually go back to dashboard here. So if you are in Alloware and you come down to lines here, you'd want to go to add local presence. And from here, you can choose whether you want to add the United States, the UK, or Canada. For UK, you do have to have an approved bundle, but we can help you with that. So for this example, let's use US. So you select US here, and then you have three different options. So you have major cities, nationwide, and then California. California is pretty much exactly what it seems, just California area codes. With the major cities, you're getting between like 60 and 80 area codes throughout the US. So it'll match the area code to the closest major city in that package. With the nationwide local presence, this comes with 300 area codes, so you're a lot more likely to have an exact match to the area code that you are calling. Over in line settings, once you have purchased that local presence package, if you come to routing and IVR, this is where you have the option to either route it to a specific user, or if you have multiple sales reps using that local presence, you can also route it to a ring group. So within that ring group, you would first just choose everyone who is using the local presence line, and this is used for inbound call routing. So you have the option here for the routing logic to either just route it back to the ring group, you can route it to the contact owner, or you can also route it to the agent who last spoke with that prospect. So I'm going to show you this in real time. So if I go over to the talk side of Alloware, I already have this pulled up right here. But if I go and I search the local presence line, I'm going to call this number here. Give it a second to call. All right, fantastic. So now if we come within the more details of the outbound call, we can click on that and we can see that the number I was calling was a 916 phone number, and the number that the local presence used was also a 916 area code. So I'm a lot more likely to answer from a 916 area code, which is California, than I am to answer to, let's say, like a New York area code. So that's how you would add in the local presence within Alloware. And now I am going to pass it back to Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. That was a really helpful demo. I think we all appreciated that. And like I said, Ashley, as a customer success manager, works with customers on this every day, and she helps people onboard and get comfortable with that. So can you just tell us really quickly, Ashley, as I'm switching my screen, like how you've seen clients get results from this and how they generally react after getting it set up?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of sales teams will use local presence as they are doing a lot of outbound dialing. So as I mentioned, if you're using one phone number to call like 100 plus leads a day, you're more likely to show up as spam and no one is going to answer those spam calls. I mean, if they do, they're probably not expecting a cold call. And so I see a lot of teams use it to kind of mitigate the spam labeling, but also to make their numbers more familiar. So their connection rates are about 4 times higher with the local presence packages.
Yeah, she can verify it really does work. She has firsthand experience with this. So, on the subject of spam labels, that kind of helps us transition into NumberGuard. Our next topic here is most people don't realize that answer rates can drop by up to 80% when you get a spam label. So it doesn't matter how great your pitch is, and it doesn't even matter if the lead requested a demo. So they could be super hot, really interested and keen to talk to you. But if you call them back after a form submission or after they reach out and they see scam likely pop up on their screen, you're done for, basically. And that's not fair to you. They're not going to pick up, and you may not get a second chance sometimes with them. That's because you already kind of flagged their antenna up there as being suspicious with that spam label. So you might not deserve it, but you're making that connection in their mind like, oh, is this person really who they say they are? So this doesn't just affect sales, but it really affects every team that relies on outbound calling in general. So obviously, sales reps will miss those critical follow-ups after a form submission or after leads reach out. But support teams are impacted as well because they can't reach customers as fast as they need to resolve tickets. So, their ticket resolution rate goes down. They're tied up just trying to get in touch with these customers who aren't recognizing the number or think that they're spam. So that can really, clog up the support pipeline as well. And then collections teams are going to struggle to recover missed payments. That's a really big use case that we see with many of our customers here at Allaware. And when you're having that local presence as a collections agent, they're going to understand, hey, this call is important. Hey, maybe it's my kid's school. Maybe it's something that my parents need at their senior center or something like that. It's going to get their attention, but it's not deceptive in any way as long as your reps identify themselves clearly on the phone. So it is a very common practice. Sometimes we get that question, hey, is this misleading? Is this ethical? It certainly is. It's just, as long as your rep isn't pretending to be somebody else when they pick up and, they are very forthright about who they are and what they're calling about, people are generally used to this and they understand. So there's no worries there. So, every time somebody does see scam likely next to your name, though, you lose a bit of credibility. So we want to mitigate that as much as possible. And a lot of times this isn't your fault because maybe your number was recycled or maybe the carriers just made a mistake. They do that sometimes. Maybe they flag you for doing a lot of high volume outreach and they don't understand why and they haven't talked with you. So that could be a problem from their end. But meanwhile, you're just going about your daily business. So it's not fair to you. And this is where NumberGuard comes in and why it's so important because it really is your defense system against false spam labels. And it works quietly in the background to make sure that you're not impacted by them. So I will toss it over to the expert, Caitlin, and she'll give us a little more context here.
Hey guys, yeah. So, talking through this, I know it was so common to see spam labels this day. I saw in the chat, Mike was mentioning right on this call that he actually had a call come in with a spam label. So it is way more common than you think. Going back through these business use cases, again, just as Jennifer was mentioning, it is so common that you're going to see this not just impact the sales, which I think is like our first impact, our first instinct when we think about where it's going to impact our business is it's going to reduce the calls that are going out, it's going to reduce revenue. But even from a sales standpoint, thinking of it from just how it's impacting your employees and their morale. I know I did sales for so many years, and when you're calling and calling and calling and just nothing's getting through, you're not even getting a time at bat to do your pitch. It can really just, can wear down on your team. So making sure that those calls are actually going through when they're making them outbound, it has such an impact there. But again, on the support side, on the collection side, it really is just a full cycle product that it impacts. So when we look at the impact of this and how NumberGuard interacts with this, I think what makes a product like NumberGuard so special, especially when we look at the environment of products that do number remediation and number management, is it really is a full service. So there's a lot of products out there these days that they might just tell you how your numbers are coming up, or they're just managing the reporting piece, or they're just managing the monitoring piece. With NumberGuard, it really is going to be a complete 180 of everything that needs to happen with the numbers, from checking them to making sure that they're clean when you're calling outbound with them. So just kind of talking through what that process looks like. On the initial setup, what I think is really nice is it's very low lift for somebody getting set up. All we need is a list of the numbers. And then from there's going to be an initial registration. We'll get into a little bit more of that in just a minute, but following that initial registration, what's going to happen is there's either going to be daily or weekly checks on these numbers, depending on your needs and the call volume that you have going out. Now, when those checks go out, it's going to happen on real, actual physical devices from all of the main carriers. And when those calls go out for every single one of those numbers, we're going to bundle it up into a nice little report so you can easily see it and your whole team can see exactly how those numbers are showing up. So are they coming up how you expect? Are they coming up as spam? Is your CNAM business label coming up? All of that is going to show up in that report. Now, from there, that's where a lot of those services will stop. And, it's great that you have the transparency, but now let's say half your numbers are labeled. What do we do from here? So with NumberGuard, that's where the next piece of this comes in. With no interaction from you, those numbers will automatically be sent out to have those numbers cleaned up with the carriers. Having relationships with those over the years, we are become very effective at removing those labels. And in doing that, you're going to have just a much better outcome when those calls are going out and those numbers are no longer labeled out from there. So A final piece on that is the initial registration that I had mentioned. With that initial registration, what I think is really important when you're just evaluating services like this is to be wary of anybody who promises you that those numbers are never going to get labeled or that they're going to be whitelisted or anything along those lines. If there was a service out there that could make sure your numbers were never labeled, as you could probably assume, people who are actually running scams would sign up for that service. So it does not exist. If you hear somebody mention that, please run the other way. But what is so important, again, with working with NumberGuard and solutions like this is knowing the best practices and being able to get advised on the strategy behind how to call. There are so many ever-changing best practices that will reduce the likelihood of your numbers getting labeled in the first place. And I think having a partner that can really, guide you on that and make sure that you're on the right path is so important. So finally, coming back to where we're looking at, keeping these numbers clean and how this affects all of the areas of your business. If you've onboarded to other softwares before, it can take months, and it might be a CRM or maybe it's a support software, and it affects a small area of your business. But if you are a business that relies on outbound calling for multiple areas, what is so important about getting these numbers clean is it is going to impact every area of your business. It's not just going to be one, and it is so quick to onboard to and has one of the biggest impacts that you can have when it comes to calling. So overall, I think just making sure that you not only have transparency into these numbers, but you have a strategy for cleaning up these numbers. Again, if you're a business that makes outbound calls, it is one of the best things that you can do for your business in 2025 going into 2026. And with that said, I will pass it back to Jennifer and let her kind of close things out from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caitlin. We appreciate that. So, to the extent that you can, I'm just curious to hear more about how it works technically in the background. And are you able to tell us just kind of how it works day to day to advocate for your customers and kind of what they can expect and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So looking at like the reporting side of things, again, it's very simple from the customer side. And that was one of the things that was important to us. Not many companies have a dedicated person they can have out there for managing their numbers every day. So from that standpoint, again, all it takes is really just a list of the numbers, and our systems will automatically push those numbers out to phones across many different carriers and then package it all up. But looking more at that registration side, and just again, managing those best practices with that initial registration that we do with the carriers, what's going to happen there is we're going to take all kinds of metrics, like how many calls you guys are making per month, how many employees you have, what is your line of business, what is that messaging going to look like? And we send those expectations over to the carriers, which can be really helpful in making sure that even if, again, this is a higher risk use case, for example, a lot of our clients are in collections and it can be a more difficult call to get through. Setting those expectations with the carriers of this is the traffic that you can expect and this is the expectation really helps in, again, just preventing those labels from happening. And when they do happen, give us a route for remediating and making sure that those labels are not persisting on there for a long time on those numbers.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. So, as Caitlin mentioned, any business that relies on outbound calling has to consider this. And if they're not, they're doing themselves a major disservice here. And I'd kind of love to hear from you, Caitlin, about, why I guess you partner with Allaware and why we're better together.
Yeah, for sure. When you guys had initially approached us, I believe it was at a lead generation show, we just love partnering with businesses that are kind of pushing the edge and pushing the boundaries of calling. I've been in this space for 7 years, and I think sometimes in the calling space, technology can lag behind, but it's been really great working with you guys. I know whether it's the local presence side of things, you guys are always just kind of putting new things out there for your customers, and it's been great working with you guys over the last year or so.
Amazing. The feeling is mutual. We really, really appreciate it. Awesome. Thanks for that rundown, Caitlin. So, yeah, it's very easy. Just obviously go to the Allaware dashboard, like Ashley showed us, navigate to NumberGuard to get this enacted, and then select your numbers to protect. And you can choose that one-time cleaning or recurring. We definitely recommend recurring for the best coverage. And then the testing and monitoring will start right away, and we'll make sure that you guys get the coverage that you need. So that's everything from our end. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us on a Thursday. And now we'll open it up to questions. So if you have not put your question in the chat, now's a great time to do so. And we will go ahead and go through them all. So let's kind of scroll back here. Okay, Charles asks, how does Local Presence get around to the new iOS update that blocks numbers unless they are saved? So yeah, this is a great one. Ashley or Caitlin, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I would say with the new iOS update, a lot of times it's more so screening the call And so with the local presence, if they're seeing the local area code, like if I'm a 916 area code, if I see another 916 phone number, I'm not necessarily thinking it's spam, so I'm a lot less likely to actually block that call from coming in. Maybe I'll send it to voicemail, maybe I'll answer it, but I'm not just going to reject it and then report as spam. So that's one of the ways that the local presence does help with that new iOS update.
Yeah. And another way you can really get around that in Alloware is to send a pre-call SMS. So we recommend doing that as well. That's going to boost your pickup rate. So that way, or the prospect knows exactly what you're calling about. They're not taken by surprise. And you're right. I mean, this iOS filter is tricky. It's going to block a lot of those unwanted calls. But yeah, we recommend sending that pre-call SMS to introduce yourself. And then they're going to expect that call and know what your business is.
To piggyback off that pre-call SMS as well, I think also segmenting out your traffic by certain types of numbers has been really valuable for some of our clients too. Because again, if you're having certain people where you're doing a ton of cold outreach and cold outbound, those numbers are just by nature going to get labeled a lot faster and have problems a lot faster. But if you have a segment of your audience that you know that they are familiar with your brand, maybe do branded caller ID or something to that effect, it can definitely help to just get those calls through better. So any segmentation that you can do there in your campaigns, definitely we've seen people have success with that as well for their overall pool of numbers and that health.
Yeah, love that. Segmentation, personalization, always key when you're doing any type of outreach. Okay, Archibald says, question regarding local presence. We have a text bot that sends an initial text when they opt in. Could that be sent to the bot, also send from a local number? Once the agent calls that lead, would they be calling the same number? Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, would the text bot be using local presence? So that's a bit different from our end. It's A2P 10DLC, so you can use the 10-digit friendly numbers. So instead of just a shorter code, we've all kind of gotten those short code messages for marketing where it's just a few digits and it's a mass message. That can look a little more widespread with outreach. But if you're trying to segment and be more personalized with your marketing, you want to use that 10DLC and go through us for approval, obviously. And then you can set that friendly number so that it looks like it's coming from a person. So that's how we would handle that. So
Yeah, and you can set it to have the local presence be the line that it's sending from. So same thing, it'll match that area code when the bot is sending out those text messages. And then I think the last part of this question, you were asking if it uses the same number when dialing that person again or texting that person. It depends. Yes, it's typically set to use the same number. It's sticky. So if we use that like first 916 number to call the prospect, it would use that same number again. We do have where you can set that to unsticky, so it changes the number. But we recommend, keeping it as the same number so it's familiar, but that's totally up to your preference.
yeah, 100%. And is the local presence package per agent? It's per line essentially, right, Ashley? So I guess.
It's per account. So you don't have to add it for every single agent, just per account, and then however many reps you want to use that local presence can.
Yeah, yeah. So that makes it nice and easy. So Jacob asked, should we add NumberGuard to all numbers or only to the main lines that our reps are using? You want to take that one, Caitlin?
Yeah. So again, it's going to depend a little bit on your business and just like what your calling patterns look like. I do think as many of your outbound numbers that you can put it on, it is helpful. And again, just having that ongoing monitoring to know at least what your numbers are showing up as, if nothing else. Another strategy that we see people have as well is some people will keep additional pools of numbers that maybe they're not even actively using in there, so that let's say one of your reps main lines do flip over to spam on Verizon, for instance, you have additional numbers in there that you can easily swap in, at least temporarily from that standpoint, and know that then that rep is not dialing out on a number that's labeled. And particularly, if certain reps have certain goals that they need to meet, it can definitely severely hinder them if their numbers are labeled. So having the ability to kind of swap those in and swap those out can be helpful. But again, having that on as many numbers that you're dialing outbound on as possible is typically what we recommend.
Yeah, I totally agree. You want to be on the safe side. You want to play it safe. You don't want to leave any of your reps stranded, and that can impact their performance. So if they have a disadvantage compared to their colleagues, that's obviously not fair to them or to you. So I completely agree. So how can we send a pre-call SMS from a local presence line? I know that kind of piggybacks off of what you were saying earlier, Ashley, if there was any more color you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I'll share my screen real quick. I'll show you. So, if you were coming in, you don't have any communications with this contact, you can come in simply, write your text here. You can also add like SMS templates. And then in the from line down here, you would just want to make sure that you are choosing the local presence line. Now, if you have a big list of numbers that you are looking to call and you want to just send out like a mass text or you can do it through a sequence or broadcast. So if you set up a sequence, you can enroll all that entire list into that sequence, send the text, that would be considered an automated text, and then same with broadcast, and then start calling them from your power dialer after those texts go out.
I love that. Thanks for showing. That was very helpful. So Joey asked, what are the best practices for segmenting? That's a great question. So I think you can definitely segment by territory, by region, if someone's interacted with your content. Obviously, if you integrate with HubSpot, we have a lot of great workflows for that you can deploy really quickly. You can retarget people who've engaged with, your email or your website or your social channels. So it's always more helpful when you go after their initial interest, but yeah, you totally can segment by type of number as well, by where it's coming from or by local region. So again, if you're targeting that specific area, that can be really helpful. So Jacob asks, in terms of workflow for reps, we should always text first and then let them know who we are, then call them. That's generally a good practice, I would say. Again, because of that iOS update, cold calls are getting blocked more and more. So it's not a bad way to go about it at all. That's kind of what we recommend. So again, you're just warming up that connection so it doesn't feel as intrusive. And you're also filtering out the people that just aren't interested at all. So if they do have interest in your product or service and they know who you are before you call, that's going to increase your pickup rate. Okay, another question. Would love a better SOP on how to check for this or get a notification if something is flagged so we know if we need to change out a line or add a new one. So is this something that you've ever worked with customers on, Ashley?
Yeah, so when we get weekly reports from Arviat, we actually send those to our clients so that they know exactly how their numbers look. So it would have the number, it has Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and it'll show you how the caller ID is showing up on each of those lines for each carriers. So that's something that we give weekly, just so you can monitor, and we will also help you monitor, but those come out on Tuesdays.
Yeah, we're very hands-on in the process along with our BIT. So we're holding your hand. We're not leaving you to the wolves to figure it out yourselves. That's why we're partners in this process. So, Musa asks, is it possible to get a recording of the webinar? Absolutely. So we'll do like a whole recap of it. I'll reach out personally after this just to check in. You'll get the recording. We'll be in touch for sure. But if anybody does want to reach out to me, I'm just going to pop my email in the chat. It's jennifer.r@alloware.com. Make sure you get that R in there or else it won't come to me. But yeah, if you need anything or are too shy to ask a question here, feel free to reach out and I'll either help you or connect you with the right person who can. But absolutely, we'll be sending the recording out afterwards. So would NumberGuard work for Australia and New Zealand numbers? Caitlin, do you want to add any context there?
Yeah, so for NumberGuard, it is specifically for US numbers right now, just being the fact that we are calling on those real devices, and unfortunately, we just haven't had the ability to add other countries in there. It is on the backlog, so you can possibly expect to see additional countries popping up soon, but at this time, it is specifically for numbers in the US.
Awesome, thank you. And I think the last question might be a good one for you too, Caitlin. Does it also help with apps, for example, RoboKiller?
Great question. So I'll actually expand on this a little bit too. An additional question that we tend to get here as well is, does it help just with the main carriers like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, or does it also cover those smaller carriers, your Boost Mobile, your Cricket, all of those? So first on that piece of things, it is actually going to cover all those additional, we call them MVNOs, the smaller carriers. Those networks, their traffic is actually going over the larger carriers. And what we have seen is that they are consistent with the carriers that traffic is going over, and that they will actually, when we are doing those remediation requests, they will be fixed on those smaller carriers. So that side of things is good. In terms of those third-party applications, it's not automatically sent out the same. However, if we have had people in the past who have mentioned that they just know that they're struggling a lot with RoboKiller or Nomo Robo, any of those out there, we do have the ability to go in and manually remediate those. It's just, it represents a very small portion of the traffic. And especially as Apple rolls out additional spam filtering and things like that, we see less and less adoption of these apps over time, which is a give and a take. But long story short, it won't happen automatically, but we do have paths to remediate those if you are particularly struggling with those.
Awesome. Thanks for that context. That was really helpful. Are there more questions? I don't see any more in the chat, but these are great, by the way. Thank you guys for the wonderful participation. We
I
appreciate
think the only one we missed was the pricing. So just so you know, the pricing does depend on how many lines you have. But if you are within Alloware here, you go to lines and you go to NumberGuard, you can click next, and then it's going to show you the pricing for how many lines you want. You'll be able to choose your package, local presence lines, all lines, just non-local presence lines, and then choose your frequency as well. So the chart is right there within the platform for you if you wanted to check that out.
Awesome. Good catch, Ashley. Thanks for that. Yep, I'm just scrolling through and I don't think we missed anything else. So again, yeah, thank you guys. These were really awesome questions. And we love that you brought your A game today. So yes, we'll be in touch with the recording. We'll follow up. Again, reach out if you have anything that you didn't get to ask today, but we'll let you guys get back to your day. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Caitlin, for being our special guest. Great job. That was really helpful. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.